Are you feeling a little discombobulated? I know I am. Politics these days feels like a yo-yo. It seems like a roller coaster that you just can't seem to get off of. It's been chaotic. There's a budget, there's not going to be a budget. There's pipelines, there's not going to be pipelines. There's housing that should come down in price. Well, housing should stay the same. It's what the heck is even going on? We just want just a little bit of consistent messaging coming from our government, but we're not getting that. And that's been a lot of the conversation. You've seen a lot of chaos happening. We have seen a lot of weirdness going on since the election, especially with Elections Canada and what is happening with the ballots and what's been going on with these different ridings. And we just want to know what the heck is going on. And that's really the reality, and that's what we're going to be touching on today's show, is since the election, things have felt weird. Things have felt off. And not just because of the government who's in power, it's just the social fabric of this country has been so shaken over the last 10 years that we really were hoping for some true change, and we didn't end up getting it. Half the country seems to feel like that change came. The other half is seething below the surface. And as the person who, has that other half who watches this show, it's more of a time to, I would say, reset. Great reset. No, I was kidding. Reset in this way. That we are going to be having a very quote unquote pragmatic government, as they said time and time again. Things aren't going to be as black and white. Things aren't going to be as in your face. And it is incumbent upon us to take a step back, look at the facts, look at what is going on and break them down of what is happening. Because attacking what the liberals are doing with emotion isn't going to win anyone over to your side. It's not going to help you feel any better, and you're not going to get any answers any more quickly. And that's kind of the tone that we're going to take in today's episode, is what the heck is going on? I'll show you what I mean. First, we had this on May 16th, 4 days ago. The liberals aren't tabling a budget. How does that affect the economy and your wallet? We had this breakdown of the CBC article. It says, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne indicated Wednesday that the government isn't planning on tabling a late spring budget and will instead opt to release a substantive economic statement later this fall. Champagne cited ongoing economic uncertainty due in large part to the U.S. trade war as one of the reasons the government doesn't or won't pass a budget before June. Hopefully by fall, there'll be less uncertainty that we need to factor into. I want to be straight with Canadians and give them the best possible financial and economic picture that I can, Champagne said in an interview with CBC Power and Politics. And people saw this and said, we are in one of the worst times financially in our country, and you're not going to bring a budget. Oh, you got to trust us. We want to be straight with you on this. We're not going to bring a budget because we want to be real with you. Do you want to be real with us? After all of the issues, after all of the slush funds, after all of the projects that just kind of, where money just disappeared into, now you want to be straight with us. The same people, the face of the same government right here, saying we just want to be real with you. That's why we're not going to give a budget. Well, the people that don't like you, the people that don't trust you, aren't going to believe what you are saying. So please give us a budget. That would be nice. And so chaos ensued. Yet even Melanie Joly saying, it takes some time to build a budget. It can't just happen overnight. Well, Fred Delory said, we got ours done in a couple months. How about you get your budget in order? Because we are struggling right now financially as a country, and we don't even have an economic picture. We might get an economic statement, maybe, just maybe. So that happened, right? And then, Carney saw what was going on and then announced yesterday that no, fall we will be bringing in a budget. Trust me. The Liberals to present ambitious and prudent fall federal budget, Mark Carney says. Prime Minister says there will be more clarity in coming months on defense spending plans, the overall economic outlook, and efforts to make Ottawa more efficient. Speaking to reporters Sunday in Rome, Carney defended his government's decision not to deliver a budget this spring, saying there's little value in rushing the process. Carney noted a new session of Parliament begins with a throw-in speech on May 27th, but the House of Commons is due to rise less than a month later. Opposition parties recently attacked Carney for being vague about his plans after his government said it would not table a budget before members of Parliament leave for the summer. And now all of a sudden, no, it's not just going to be an economic statement. No, we will be bringing in a budget. I'll be straight with you. As an outsider looking in and trying my best not to even make this partisan, this Liberal cabinet seems completely in chaos. They don't really have, it seems like Carney's having a hard time reining everybody in. We saw this even the first day of the cabinet meetings. where you had Guilbeault saying, we don't need more pipelines, but Carney says, no, we will build pipelines if there's consensus, and trust me, there's a strong consensus right now. Then you had his Minister of Housing says, no, we need to keep housing prices the way they are. And Carney says, no, like the housing pricing needs to come down. Again, there's just this chaos and lack of understanding and continuity in their messaging, leaving a very sensitive and delicate country in more chaos than it needs to be already, because this is the problem that people have. Mark Carney and his liberals sold themselves as, no, trust me, with Mark Carney at the helm, we'll be different. With Mark Carney at the helm, we'll be pragmatic. With Mark Carney at the helm, we will be more helpful, and we will make sure we get things done in a very decisive fashion. Yet, all we've seen is chaos since the election. First off, our elections still aren't settled. Second, they can't even get the right messaging out. And the right messaging is very important at this point in time, because you had a panel show up on Sunday with pretty much all the people who helped Carney get elected now fighting over Carney's cabinet, which I thought was really interesting. You had Kathleen Monk, you had Corey Tenecki, and then there's a third, I forgot his name, but they're all fighting over this stuff. Like, what's going on with the messaging of the cabinet? What is happening? And as much as I dislike Corey, he was right on the specific issue. And I have to admit, liberals are playing with the fate of a country. But first, you ever read a headline and think, is that true? Or worse, why is every outlet telling me a different story? Yes, it's no secret that news today is broken. Outrage gets clicks and algorithms feed you what you already believe. It's easy to end up in an echo chamber without even realizing it. That's why I've grown to bring in Ground News as a part of our show prep. It's not just another news app. It actually shows you how different media outlets are covering the same story across the political spectrum. You can literally see the bias of your sources, track how stories are covered in left, center, and right outlets, and get the full picture without the noise. Like here with this story, Prime Minister Mark Carney says Liberals will table a budget this fall. We can see that over 50 news sources covered this story. And you can see all the headlines of the reporting sources so you can easily compare them. While the headlines are very similar for the story, when you go back up to the bias comparison button, if you click here, you can see that left-leaning outlets frame the delayed and deliberate, while right-leaning coverage spotlights skepticism about liberal spending promises, framing them as fiscally irresponsible with warnings about exacerbating already expanding deficits. Another great feature is their blind spot feed, which highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum, so you never miss out on important stories that aren't reported by your usual news source. I partnered with Ground News because of their mission to bring clarity to the news. We've learned that everyone has their bias, including myself, and Ground News allows you to understand the bias and read those stories through that specific lens, giving you a fuller picture and fuller understanding of what is happening in the news. If you want to stop being manipulated by headlines and start seeing the fuller picture of the news stories that come across your feed, use my link ground.news/elevate or scan the QR code to get 40% off and unlimited access to their Vantage plan. Remember to use my link in the description or the QR code on screen to get the discount for a limited time. Again, that's ground.news/elevate. Now let's get into the story.
The guy is a radical, and I don't think he cares about team play. I've seen no evidence of team play from Steven Guilbeault in his entire political career. But I told, maybe he won't be thrown out of caucus. I agree with that. It's an overstatement on my part. But I think he should be thrown out of cabinet, because the whole point of cabinet is, that there is a boss, there is a message, there is, election campaign platform. And the people who are given the most power to implement that platform are in cabinet. And if you are an outlier, if you don't like what the party ran on, or you have a problem communicating and falling in line, you should not be in cabinet. And I think those are absolute rules in every government I've ever seen. And I think he's going to have to fall in or fall out. But he's playing with a lot more than Mark Carney's political popularity and campaign promises. He's playing with the future of the country. There's a reason why, there's going to be a referendum on separation in Alberta. There's a reason why there are a lot of people very, very angry in Western Canada. And it's because of the approach of Steven Guilbeault and Justin Trudeau to resource development. And Mark Carney is supposed to be a break from that history and having a reset in those relationships. That's not going to happen as long as Steven Guilbeault is running around running his mouth.
As much as I don't like the guy, he was right on this. The chaos going on in cabinet is not just affecting the Liberal Party. It's now because you ran a campaign saying you are going to be the anchor. You are going to be the one that helps steer Canada in the right direction. You're the one who's going to direct the ship and in a time in the country's history where it's incredibly chaotic that was created by Trudeau and his henchmen, I'll be quite frank. And those henchmen also now exist in this current Carney cabinet. And suffice to say, now all of a sudden there's chaos erupting in this cabinet. This stuff needs to be figured out, and needs to be figured out now, because as Corey says, this is not just about the Liberal Party. This is about the future of our country and the unity that needs to come with it. And it was funny that Kathleen Monk, who's there on the far left, took a shot at Corey on this and even tried to dress up the chaos going on in the Liberal cabinet as a positive compared to what's going on in the Conservative Party.
That he may have set a strategic trap for Conservatives and New Guilbeault, but I don't know. I think that like Carney, this, Corey switched his favorite topic being, Pierre Poilievre's bad campaign to now let's, say bad things about Guilbeault. But I don't know. I think that like Carney this week, created his cabinet. I think that he may have set a strategic trap for Conservatives and New Democrats by basically, not putting out the budget first and basically kind of pushing them back into this procedural whining that you've already seen them do, tenfold, saying, we need to have a budget now. And I think that that's more interesting to me is like, will we fall into, when the House returns on the 26th, the same kind of patterns that we've seen for the last 2 years, where basically the opposition parties obstruct but for useless process things and don't actually, and then Carney gets to differentiate himself in some ways by saying, I'm the Prime Minister of Action. I mean, you can even look at the two leaders. I mean, the New Democrats don't have a caucus that is able to do this, but, we have one leader in Pierre Poilievre who's controlling his caucus and not allowing them to speak. And it seems like so far in early days, we have Prime Minister Carney who's letting his cabinet ministers talk about everything from housing prices to pipelines.
And contradict him.
And it's kind of fascinating here. Obviously takes a shot at Corey for, now moving from Poilievre to Stephen Guilbeault. But as well here to say, trying to drum it up in such a way that Conservatives focus on petty things and petty process things, whereas Carney, he's letting his cabinet talk. I mean, this might be a good thing, Be careful. I would say be very careful on that, because these people in the Ottawa bubble don't realize that politics actually impact people's real lives. And you not having a coherent message for Canadians is a bad thing for Canada, especially when your cash cow is looking to be on its way out. How about a little more thought, a little more pragmatism, a little bit more tact might be helpful in these days, especially if you're the government that says that you're going to be the ones who steer the ship. You're going to be okay. You're going to be the ones who are going to be the grown-ups in the room. Well, so far it looks like the inmates have taken over the asylum and leadership is nowhere to be found on it. So much so, we all know this story by now. FBI Director Kash Patel called out Canada for exactly its role in the fentanyl crisis. This situation's gone real quiet lately. It's been kind of on the down low during this whole election campaign. Wondering why Trump was really quiet on this when he was really loud about it initially. What is happening with this? And well, Kash brought it back to the forefront and told people not to forget what is really going on and who is the partner who is not partnering with the U.S. to fight against this. And man, he said some pretty damning things in this minute and a half clip.
Where are all the narco traffickers going to keep bringing this stuff into the country? The northern border. Our adversaries have partnered up with the CCP and others, Russia, Iran, on a variety of different criminal enterprises, and they're sailing around to Vancouver and coming in by air. And the sheer tyranny of distance of the northern border and the lack of cooperation from federal authorities in prior administrations to actually firm up that northern border is what's causing a continuation of violent crime. Now, we're focused on it, and we're calling our state and local law enforcement partners up there. But you know who has to get to step in is Canada, because they're making it up there and shipping it down here. And I don't care about getting into this debate about making someone the 51st state or not, but they are our partner in the north. And say what you want about Mexico, but they helped us seal the southern border. The facts speak for themselves. The border that's open, I'll give you a statistic that I gave to Congress that nobody was paying attention to. Over 300 known or suspected terrorists crossed into this country last year illegally. Known or suspected terrorists, not illegals. Not just illegals, known or suspected terrorists. 85% of them came in through the northern border. Wow. This year, 100 known or suspected terrorists have crossed into this country illegally. 64 are south and north.
What I found really interesting about this clip and this interview in general was the messaging that Canada is no longer a helpful partner. And this is something we've been talking about for a long time, especially Sam Cooper has been obviously sounding the alarm on this for ages now. even as far back as the Joe Biden administration lost trust in working with Canadian authorities on this issue. This has been across different administrations at this point. And Canadians do not want to believe it. You have those like Laura Babcock who are retweeting posts like these and saying, F you. Not adding anything substantial to the conversation, just saying, F you, not true. Liberal mouthpieces on that side don't like that this is a reality. It needs to be talked about. But it needs to be talked about tactfully. It needs to be talked about with thought. And I refuse to add to the noise of yelling just for the sake of yelling. No, we need to call this out. This is important. When the FBI director, regardless of what you think about him and you think about the American administration, this is a truth and it's a reality. And well, I'll say to Cash, Canada's not being a great partner and you can put pressure on us in that way. That's fine. But also your boss helped re-elect the lack of partnership, if I'm being quite frank with you. There's issues on both sides of this that really frustrate me in general. So this ticks me off because, well, yeah, the Trudeau government's has done nothing, and then just kind of shrugged it off. Carney says, we'll take our border security seriously, and we'll see. It's yet to be seen. I hope so, but I don't see it. When Kash Patel comes out in Fox News, says, yeah, new administration, I don't really care. We're still not seeing any movement. Look at the stats. Look who we've caught. Look who we've been tracking. They're coming from Canada. Yet Canada was the first thing. What did Canada do? Liberals were really quick to cite but only 1% of fentanyl comes from Canada. Just the disingenuous alternative facts to protect themselves and protect their fragile ego as Canadians. No, my friends, we only check 1% of the containers that come to our shipping ports on the federal shipping ports. So of course things are going to fall through the cracks that aren't actually tracked. And to those like Laura Babcock, I know reality's tough. I know it's tough to really come to grips that someone like your beloved Mark Carney, your beloved Liberals, would allow something like this to happen, but they did. And journalists are trying to do their job to call it out. Yet people like you just keep trying to close your eyes and ears to all of it. However, we're going to keep pressing on this issue. We're going to keep talking about it because it's important. We need to secure our side of the border. It's pretty simple. And we need to be reliable partners. I will keep advocating for that as well. But anyways, that's the stories for today. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.